Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I'm Stephen Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm here with Walker Jones. And we are going to talk about the day of collection from the Grove Collective, which is supposed to happen Monday as well. What exactly is that day of collection, Walker?
Yeah, Stephen. Hey, great to see you again. Great to be on the show. Yeah, look, it's a chance for us to really have a moment in time focus on giving a call to action before the season starts. Everybody's getting really excited about the season, as they should. Fall camp's going great. The first game's a couple weeks away, and what we really want to do is just kind of harness that excitement and that interest in our football program, our athletic programs in general, what Coach Beard is doing in basketball, what Coach Yo has done, obviously, and really just try to impress upon our fans the need to continue to give. Stephen, the great thing is our people stepped up. Our people have given generously, and they've put us at the forefront of the NIL landscape with our collective. And we've been highly functional. We've been well funded. We've been very impactful, and we've been able to really punch way above our weight and be included in a lot of conversations that normally Ole Miss wouldn't be included in. And that's because our fans have been generous and they've given. But to continue to lead from the front and continue to establish our position of power or influence in the NIL marketplace, we have to continue to give. And that's just the unfortunate reality of the NIL marketplace right now. And, it is the model. There's things that need to be tweaked and fixed on it, but it is the model we have to play in right now. And we have a bunch of head coaches who understand that model and use it very effectively to manage and build their roster through the collective and through NIL. So really that's what the day of collection is about, is to get everybody refocused on, yes, we've had success. Yes, you've done a good job giving, but we can't stop now. And really that call to action with our current members, potential members, the Oxford business community, and just Rebel Nation in general, really having that moment in time focus on giving.
So what exactly do y'all have planned for that? I know it's a live stream through OleMissSports.com. You can see that on the bottom, and it starts at 11 a.m. Central. But what's on the agenda for the day?
Really, we're going to be live on the YouTube channel, live on a lot of the social media handles, both Ole Miss and the Grove Collective and others. And we've got a whole day planned of interviews with our head coaches, selected student athletes, our administration, Keith Carter and others, members of our foundation, and also Mayor Tannehill from Oxford to announce a really neat initiative with the city. So it's really going to be a deep dive with all our coaches, how important NIL is, how they can support the collective. It'll be a unique perspective, not just coming from me or from Keith, but coming from all our head coaches, coming from our student athletes, and other people, other stakeholders that are involved in our success. So really excited about people to hear from all that wide array of people, but also too, there's going to be a lot of really neat giveaways, really neat promotions. We're going to be auctioning off a chance to do the Walk of Champions with Lane Kiffin at the Georgia Tech game, some autographed memorabilia from Quinshon Judkins, Lane Kiffin, others. So there'll be some incentives for our people to give and to promote the collection day with some of the opportunities that we're going to raffle off, auction off, make available to reward our people for stepping up. So any Ole Miss fan out there that chooses to continue to give and take part in this day of collection on Monday has a chance to win some really cool stuff. So that's one thing that we're really excited about as part of the bigger day.
Yeah, and we've discussed in the past that you are more of a carrot person and I'm kind of a stick person. So why should Ole Miss fans feel urgency right now about doing this?
Well, I think that's a great question, Stephen, and one I get a lot. And I think what we can tell people is what we have proven to this point is that the dollars that we get, we're very impactful with. We're very efficient with our money. We make $1 spend like $3. And again, we're punching way above our weight. If you look at, the various rankings out there, and you could shoot holes in these rankings, who knows, but the people that spend a lot of time analyzing this, Ole Miss, like football, we're in the top 3, I think, in portal classes this year. What Chris Beard is doing to rebuild his roster in basketball, what Coach Bianco and Coach Lafferty and the baseball staff have done in the portal to rebuild the baseball team. I mean, look at those 5 or 6 portal guys we got in baseball. Those were the top 15 guys available in the country. And we were able to beat the Tennessees, the LSU, Florida, Miami, you name it. We were able to beat all the quote unquote blue bloods for a lot of these players that came into the portal. And so I think what people can realize is that it's working and that we're effective and we're efficient in how we spend the money that people entrust with us. So that they should have that peace of mind knowing that we're not just, covering our eyes and throwing darts at a board. We have a system, we have a process, we have we analyze a lot of information. And again, we spend our money wisely. So all that to be said, they should have comfort knowing that the money's going to go to good use, but also too, that it is the most important thing right now. I heard somebody say yesterday on social media that, you can't complain now anymore about a player going somewhere for money for NIL, because that's now just as important as a new stadium or a new locker room or the system they play in. So whether you like it or not, it's here. Now, will the model change and will there be some regulation? Of course. But if you want to be good and you want to be competitive and you want to do it year in and year out, you have to fund these opportunities and these NIL platforms. And so I think that's what I really want to tell people is you kind of got to put your personal view or moral high ground away and say, you know what? I know my collective is going to spend the money the right way. They're going to do it compliant. They're going to do it by the letter of the law, and they're going to be really impactful, and it's going to translate directly to success on the field. At the end of the day, if we do that, that should be enough.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. In fact, y'all are founding members of the collective is association. Is that the last word?
That's correct. Yep.
And they've just expanded by 10 teams. They're up to 17 now. Talk about that initiative, because I think that happened after the last time we talked.
Yeah, look, we're really honored to be in that group. Again, you talk about, the group that we're in: Georgia, Tennessee, Florida State, USC, Michigan, Ohio State, Louisville, Penn State, just to name a few. That's a great group of collectives and universities. And for us to be included in that, one of only 3 SEC, well, South Carolina, I think, just joined, but in Missouri, but we were one of the first, only 3 in the SEC to be the first part of the founding member of that group. And I think that just speaks to the reputation that we have on the NIL landscape, because we do things the right way and we've been really efficient. And we've been very creative with what we've done. And that's what we have to do at Ole Miss, is be really creative and think outside the box. But yeah, being a part of that group is really, Stephen, because we're all trying to figure out what this is going to look like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road. Nobody has a crystal ball. It's kind of like the old Rubik's Cube. Just when you think you get it right, another color pops up, or you got to twist it again. And so, being a part of that group, to have a bunch of like-minded collectives that are going through the same thing you're going through, a unified voice, sharing of best practices, and a voice on the legislative front as well, because due to the very nature of a collective, we're at the point of commerce for all this. We have to deal with every stakeholder out there: NCAA, coaches, players, parents, agents, universities. We have to deal with all of them. So we should be able to get a lot of really tangible, actionable intel to the really smart people in the conversation to help continue to develop the NIL marketplace. And so really excited about that. We got a bunch of really neat ideas coming out of there. We're having an off-site next week. And I think it's going to be for the greater good of NIL and our student athletes. And again, to your point, like you said, to be one of a small group and a group of that stature is really, really a great thing for us.
For the TCA to reach that critical mass to where they can just no longer be ignored, or however the NCAA wants to look at it, and it's not so much of a fight, how many teams probably need to come on board?
Yeah, look, we're going to continue. We've already had 4 or 5 more schools hit us since we made that announcement yesterday, where we added a new team, a group of 10. And I don't know if there's a specific number out there. I think it's the right ones, the ones that are doing it the right way. that haven't run afoul of any sort of NCAA or state infraction, that are supporting all their athletes, men and women, on their campus, that are being good stewards of their donors' money, that are being great partners to their universities. I mean, we kind of have a little bit of a checklist and kind of a filtering process for those that want to be a part of it, because we want it to be representative of the greater good of college athletics. And we want it, to your point, we want to have a meaningful and magnified voice in the conversation. And really the only way to do that is probably quality over quantity. So if we can keep adding the right schools and collectives that are doing it the right way and being an advocate for their student athletes while doing it within the structure that we have, then I think our voice will continue to be heard, and more and more people will continue to reach out to us and want us to be part of the conversation. So, I think it's going to be great. We've already gotten a lot of traction. Congress came out, I think, a couple of weeks ago with 4 or 5 different bills that were all over the place. And we're trying to work with Congress to say, look, don't you guys all talk? Like, can't y'all all get together? Maybe instead of 5 of you introducing 5 separate bills over a 10-day period, why don't we kind of get together and cobble together one bill that's bipartisan that could help this conversation? And also, too, the TCA can help you stay focused on what the real issues are. Because I think that's what happens sometimes. The NCAA and Congress gets focused on like anecdotal information. Oh, this is the biggest problem with NIL. And really, when you're in the trenches, that's really not the biggest problem. So I think we can help steer that conversation.
All right. One last question on NIL, and then I want to ask you about that 97 Egg Bowl. I talked with Stuart Patridge last night, so I want to get your perspective on that. But do you think that the TCA is doing all this wonderful work? Do you think there is I'm not being accusatory or anything, but is there an element out there where people that are kind of benefiting from the chaos that is going to make this harder than it needs to be?
100%. I think that's the harsh reality right now. People are taking advantage of the ambiguity and the undefined nature of NIL, and it's created some issues. And I think it's exacerbated some of the problems, some of the acute problems that have developed with the system. And so again, look, creativity and being entrepreneurial and all those things are great, but when the system is that way as well, and there's varying rules for varying people all trying to do the same thing, that never works. So the example is, you've got these patchwork of state statutes that are popping up all over the place. And depending on where you're located, you're either in a really good spot or you're at a competitive disadvantage. And so I think that's what's happened. The state statutes have been a perfect example to your question, Stephen. Well, what prevents a state's legislation going, you know what? I want to really make sure our schools are really good. So we're going to give them the best NIL statute possible and give them protection from any sort of enforcement so they can be really good and they can go win a championship. And that's more money for our state, more money for our schools, more popularity, all those types of things. And there's nobody to stop them. And think about the legislative process, how long it takes to change certain state laws and how fast these are getting changed. That shows you how important it is. And also the danger that we're kind of infringing upon. It's a little bit like a race to the bottom. Who can create the most, wide-ranging, open state statute to give their schools the biggest advantage and not really be worried about the long-term effects of what that does to the competitive marketplace. And I think that's probably gives me the most heartburn, but I think that's probably the place that we can have the quickest intervention to get it back on track.
Until then, that day of collections and giving as a whole to the Grove Collective is the way that you combat this, people.
100%.
If
we do a great job raising money, Stephen, not to cut you off there, but you're right. If we do a great job of continuing to support and raise money, we're going to continue to be able to be competitive regardless of what happens on that landscape.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we're going to change subjects a little bit right now because you were on the field in 1997 and I talked to Stuart Patridge. I've had John Avery on and we always talk about that game. First of all, what do you remember about that 97 game?
Fond memories, really fond memories. I remember going over there, if you think back about that, what was on the line that day, the loser was not going to a bowl game. It was not like it is now where you go 6-6 or even 5 and 7, you go to a bowl game now. We were 7 and 4, playing to be 7 and 4 and begging to get into a bowl game. And you ought to got to remember too, as a senior like John Avery and Stuart Patridge, we hadn't been to a bowl game because we'd been on probation. So this was our one chance after fighting through all that probation, 2 back-to-back years of not being able to play on TV, not being able to go to a bowl game. It came down to that one game for us to be able to go have a chance to go to a bowl game. Now 7 and 4, you'd be in a great bowl game. You'd be playing on New Year's Day, maybe, but back then that wasn't the case. So I just remember the magnitude. I remember getting on that bus that morning in Tupelo from the team hotel and taking that bus ride over from Tupelo to Starkville and just thinking about the 23 seniors that we had that had fought through. We only lost one player out of that class when we got hit on probation as a freshman class. Everybody stayed true to the school. And it came down to that one moment in time, that one game for us to finally get a chance to go to a postseason bowl. And I remember thinking about that on the bus ride, like, how fitting is this to play our arch rival at their stadium, Thanksgiving weekend, for really everything that we'd worked for and all the pain and suffering we'd been through with the probation. So that was really just leading up to it. And then I just remember, obviously the fight was crazy, but it was the dirtiest, toughest, most physical game I ever played in. I mean, it was an absolute war. I never forget, when Coach Tuberville at the end of the game, when he was kind of talking to the coaches on the side, like, well, if we score, we're going to go for 2. And I remember Art Kaufman, our defense coordinator, goes, "Coach, you got to go for 2. My guys are done." And we were. I mean, they had a big running back, J.J. Johnson, who was a 230-pound tailback. And they had a huge offensive line, Pork Chop Womack. They had, I think, 2 or 3 pros on that offensive line. And, I mean, it was just a bloodbath, physical, tough war out there. And we were beat up and we were done. And it was low scoring, so I just remember it being the most physical game I ever played in.
Yeah, and one of these days I'm going to have Matt Luke on the show. But his
best story about that game.
Yeah, he was on one leg, just completely injured, and on the 2-point play, it missed the defender's fingertip by about 3 millimeters.
Matt Luke, say what you want to say about when he was our head coach.
Mm-hmm.
People agree, disagree, whatever. But Ole Miss fans should remember that game. Matt Luke had a torn knee, tore his MCL, and literally couldn't play the entire. He tried to go out the first series, and he couldn't play. And they had a nose guard, Eric Dotson, from Pascagoula, Mississippi, who was an all-SEC 330-pound animal. And Matt Luke's trying to block him on one leg. And the first series, he couldn't do it. He went out of the game. Well, that last series, he put his helmet on, walked up to Hugh and said, "Put me back in the game." And Hugh said, "Okay." And he put him back in the game. And if you watch that last series, Matt Luke literally is dragging his leg to get to the line of scrimmage because we were in hurry up. And he's dragging his leg, blocking a future NFL nose tackle and Eric Dotson, holding him out, fighting him tooth and nail. And on that 2-point conversion, Eric Dotson throws him down like a rag doll and is going right at Stuart Patridge. And Matt Luke swings around and leg whips him and cuts his legs out from underneath him. And the ball literally goes 2 inches right over Eric Dotson's finger into Corey Peterson's arm. Matt Luke doesn't do that. It hits Eric Dotson square in the face, and we lose 14-13, and we don't go to a bowl game.
Yeah, the difference is, and for Ole Miss fans watching, this might have difficult memories, but the 2-point conversion play in the Egg Bowl last year, where a hand just reached out and got a piece of it. That same thing could have happened in '97, but Matt Luke, man, just one of the architects of the greatest moments, one of the greatest moments in Ole Miss history.
It was, and look, it was a culmination of all those years under probation and a senior class that, had stayed true to the school, and we weren't the most talented, but I think we helped save the program from the second worst probation at that time outside of SMU, and to do it in Starkville, in that environment, in the Egg Bowl, it was my greatest memory. I mean, we beat LSU that year, who was, I think, 3rd in the country that same year, which was great down in Baton Rouge, but that game, that Egg Bowl, I'll never forget it. And the way we came together, the fight before the game was crazy. We knew they were going to do, we knew they were going to do something. And, my good buddy Jackie Sherrill was the architect behind that little fisticuff before the game, and Deuce McAllister breaking their recruit's nose on the field. And I just never forget. It's just such a crazy day with that brawl, and then to end the way it did. It was a special time, and I hope Ole Miss fans, remember that as fondly as we do.
I tell people all the time, people talk about how 2014 and 2015 and 2016, the Ole Miss State game was just too toxic. And I was like, no, there was a brawl in 97. I think 91 in Jackson, they lined up from 20 to 20. I think there was a brawl in 84. This is nothing new.
No. Well, and I grew up, my grandfather actually played at Mississippi State. My dad played at Ole Miss. So I was a third generation getting to play in the Egg Bowl. So I knew all the history about the Egg Bowl. And, when it was down in Veterans Memorial Stadium down in Jackson, I used to go every year because I grew up in Jackson, and I was there that fight in 91. And, there's just something different. It's the most underrated rivalry, I think, in all sport. And it doesn't get the attention that the Iron Bowl gets or Ohio State, Michigan. But man, when you're talking about just pure passion, hatred, competitiveness, it doesn't play second field to anybody. And again, that's why it was just so great for it to go down the way it did that year. And we all, that senior class, whenever we all get back together, we all tell our stories. And as I said, Stuart Patridge leading that drive. They scored the first drive of the game and then don't do anything until that last drive of the game. And it was crazy, but very fond memory for sure.
All right, one more question for you. Do you have any idea what Tommy Tuberville had against the Navy jerseys?
It's funny. Not really. Coach was. The one thing I'll say about Senator Tuberville is. He had a real clear definition of what he wanted the brand to be, and what he wanted. Like, he came in, the powder blue helmets went away. We went to the Navy helmets. He changed the stripe on the pant. He did a lot of things because he was trying to kind of reinvent the program. And coming out of the awful year of Joe Lee Dunn and the crash of Billy Brewer, who recruited me, who I love. I think Coach Earl was just trying to do anything to try to revive the program and have a new look and a new thought about who we were. The Navy jersey, because I grew up, I love the Navy jersey. And I remember my sophomore year, we played LSU at night in 1995, and he let us wear the Navy jerseys.
I was there.
Yeah. And they beat the living hell out of us. It didn't work. We were all fired up because we walked in the locker room and those Navy jerseys were in our lockers when we got off the bus and went in the locker room. And man, we were like, oh, this is great. We're going to kill these guys. And we got the crap beat out of us. And I think that was the point when he was like, guess what? Those Navy jerseys are out of here.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Anyway, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Every dayers, we have Tom Vanderford, we have Brian Smith, we have Derek Vandegrift, and this video will be up all weekend. Please donate in the day of collection for the Grove Collective. It'll be on the Ole Miss Sports website starting at 11 a.m. Central on Monday, August 21st. Thank you so much, Walker, for stopping by, and I hope we can do it again, bud.
Always great talking to you, Stephen. Give, donate. Let's keep this train rolling, guys. We're in a good spot. Let's keep it going. Thank you so much. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.